Hello there. I know it's been a while since we've done one of our recaps, and so we thought we'd do a recap to kind of keep everybody informed as well as to say goodbye, because we're going to say goodbye to a member of our staff, but we'll talk about that at the end. Okay, if you want a tissue, you can have a tissue. I guess I gave that one away. Okay. Well, to begin with, today is the feast of Saint Maria Goretti, and it's a very painful feast in the sense that here was a young girl, 12 years old, who was poor in southern Italy, and because of their poverty, were living in the same building as another poor family who had a young son who was probably about maybe 18 or 20.
I heard 20.
Okay, 20. And of course he tried to sexually assault her, rape her, and she fought her attacker off, but was stabbed multiple times.
13.
And 13? Okay. And died the day after the attack. And of course, she was canonized as a saint who defended her virginity as well as to remain faithful to what she believed, that God would not want this, as she said to her attacker. Now, besides her being a very special child and very loving and very supportive of her family, she took care of her younger brothers and sisters. She also, before she died, forgave her attacker and said she would pray for him that he did not die and be damned, to hell. Her attacker, of course, was arrested, found guilty, and spent 30 years in prison. I did read a book on him, Antonio, his name was. How can anybody named Anthony do something like that? But anyway, and in prison, he had a dream where the glorified Saint Maria Goretti appeared to him and invited him to accept Christ and be converted. And there was this almost miraculous change in this individual. It did not end his prison. He had to continue to be in prison, but he became a changed man and soon received the sacraments, returned to the practice of his faith. And when he was released from prison 30 years later, he did seek out the mother of Maria Goretti and begged for forgiveness. Of course, he was a marked man, so he had a very difficult time kind of getting back into society, but he soon took a job with the Franciscans. And when Maria Goretti was canonized a saint in 1950, not only was her mother and her siblings there, but also Antonio. And he had, on various occasions, would visit with the family, and there was a reconciliation. So I think on this feast day of Saint Maria Goretti, I think we should recognize that, number one, we must work for the eradication of sexual abuse, sexual assault, and rape that continues today to terrorize women, children, and even men. Maybe not as many, but it still happens. And that type of sexual assault is not rooted in sexual attraction. It is rooted in power and manipulation and abuse. And that is not appropriate. So we pray for all the victims who have experienced that. We pray for healing. But we also pray for reconciliation, because Maria Goretti is a saint who reminds us that reconciliation can be possible even between people who have done bad things to each other. We might not like to think about that, but I think it is something that Maria Goretti reminds us. So To all those who are named Maria, most of you are probably named after the Blessed Mother, but a few might be named after Maria Goretti. A happy feast day. Okay, so what's happening?
So we just wrapped up a week of Summer Religious Education Academy in June, headed by Mark and Lisa and all the wonderful catechists. From what I've heard and what I've seen, it was a very fruitful experience for both the kids, the catechists, the staff members. I know, just as someone observing, not having a huge role in religious education, Summer Academy, is Flat Mary was a big thing. So I know I grew up as a kid with Flat Stanley being like a huge book. When I would go to scholastic book fairs, I would go to my dingy school library. Flat Stanley was like everyone's favorite. And the concept, for those who don't know, is there was like a paper cutout of a man named Stanley, and so in the fictional book, it's like he kind of just travels and kind of has some semblance of like personhood, but he's also like a traveling piece of paper where he'd go to France, he'd go to Rome, he'd go to Mars, he'd go to the moon, everything like that. So Mark and Lisa had the wonderful idea of doing Flat Mary, because the patron of the Religious Education Academy, specifically this year, is Mother Mary. And so Mary was a huge component of the week of Summer Academy, where the kids got to know a lot of Marian apparitions. We have a map in our hallway where we can see where Mary has appeared in a very special way to some very special people. And then they also got to color in their own Flat Mary. And so we've been receiving like tens and tens of pictures of kids going to the beach, going to their grandma's house, going to the mall, and they have their Flat Mary with them, which I think is really beautiful. And if you'd like to see some pictures, there are some on the Facebook that got posted a day or two ago.
What was also wonderful, that they attended Mass every morning, and after that they did a decade rosary in honor of Mary as well. So that was a wonderful, wonderful week that they had experienced.
It was a beautiful week from my perspective. It was a very busy week, because the children were always in movement, and the catechists were always in motion, and just watching them was tiring. To be part of the faculty and be involved, God bless them all. And we are gearing up for another week of, what are we calling that program now?
Religious Education Summer Academy.
Religious Education Summer Academy. Okay, maybe we'll just shorten it to Summer Academy.
Summer Academy, that's what's, the tote bag says, I think, St. Robert's Summer Academy.
Okay.
So.
Risa. What?
Risa,
Risa.
Religious Ed Summer Academy. As long as it's not camp, we're all good.
Okay. But anyway, but we will have one coming up, I think, shortly.
It's coming up quickly. It's in a week and a half, I
Okay.
guess, yeah.
Okay. And that will be in July, and that'll be a whole new group of children. And for next year, or if you're interested, for your own child or your grandchild, you know, just stop by at the 9 o'clock Mass, watch them at Mass. They're learning. You know, how to act in Mass. I know they act better when they're with their parents, but they're with their friends, and you know, that little demon over here who says it's all right to talk in church. You know, their parents wouldn't allow them to talk in church, but there's no parent there, and their friend is right next to them. So sometimes they give in to that, and not to the little angel on this shoulder that says, no, you really don't want to talk in church. That voice gets drowned out.
Of course.
But we're very happy, and
Yeah,
we're,
there was like 38 children that attended
Yeah.
for the first class.
I think the
100
numbers are
something.
between 500, 600
Yeah.
total this summer, so.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much to every catechist
Yes.
who gave their time,
Oh,
every
please.
volunteer, because that is a very grand adventure to go on. You
It
know,
is.
coordinating 200 kids a week, so almost 600 over the course of the summer, and these catechists are giving their time because the catechists have teaching licenses and they are educators in the September to June school year. So they all say, okay, school's done, time to teach some more. Let me give myself to the church. Let me give myself to St. Robert's. And that's just such a beautiful thing.
it is, and because so many of our students are in the Summer Academy program. When we begin our fall program, we will not need as many days or hours for religious education. I think we'll be down to Tuesday and Wednesday. But I have to tell you, we can only do 3 weeks of summer. So if anybody thinks we're adding another week, no. All right. This weekend coming up, the weekend of July 8th and 9th, we will be having our missionary cooperative program, Preacher. This is a program started in the Diocese of Trenton to allow missionaries to come once a year into the parish to talk about their mission, their work, and to take up a collection in support of the missions. This weekend, we are going to be hosting Father Emmanuel, who is living in New Orleans, but he is a member of the Diocese of Livingstone, Zambia, and he will be preaching about the work of the church in Zambia, in that diocese. So we just ask everybody to please come and listen and be ready to support the missions. It is important also to remember that it is in many of our mission countries that the church is still being persecuted, especially in countries where radical groups are targeting churches and schools and Christian children and Christians in general with attacks. And so the work of the missionary is not only to proclaim the gospel, but also many times to rebuild what was destroyed and to heal where there were wounds inflicted. So let us pray for the missions. Also this weekend, it's a very busy weekend.
Very busy.
Yeah, very busy.
Also this weekend, Freehold Township Day will be held in the park next door. And that will end with a very large and beautiful firework display. And so they will be using our parking lot for the overflow of people. And so usually they come in after our 4:30 Mass, and I hope they will continue to come in. Well, yeah, because the fireworks start at 8, I think, right? 8 o'clock?
But a lot of people go to the park because there's rides.
Well, because of the rides, okay. So, but our parking lot, we allow the township to use as overflow parking. So we just want to let people know about that, and we're glad to be a part of it and celebrate our township. Okay, now the RCIA inquiries are opening for August and September. We're beginning again to invite those people who might have questions about the Catholic Church, and they've been asking you, and please let them know they can come and ask us. We will have our team available. Also for people who have not received all their sacraments. And of course, I always feel bad because it always happens when, and they know they didn't receive confirmation. Sometimes they didn't even receive Holy Communion. And then a cousin, a best friend, someone says, would you be the godparent? And it's like they call us and we say, well, you haven't received your sacraments. Now, some people get a little annoyed with that because it's our fault they didn't receive their sacraments.
Obviously.
I mean, I told them, mother, don't put them in religious ed. Don't send them to a Catholic school. It's my fault. And of course, nobody wants to take the responsibility of not receiving all their sacraments. Somebody should have told them. And we realize we're in that type of society today. And the church has existed in all the different types of society, so we'll get through this, and soon people will once again take personal responsibility. For those who want to take personal responsibilities, please call us. We will work with you. We will prepare you for the sacraments. And it's not one and done. It's a process. So whether you want to become Catholic, receive first baptism, First Holy Communion, and confirmation, or you were baptized in another Christian denomination and want to become enter into communion with the Catholic Church, which is a profession of faith, confirmation, and communion. Or you are baptized Catholic, made your First Holy Communion, but just never got confirmed. And there are many legitimate reasons for that. I mean, I happen to remember working with somebody who was preparing for confirmation in one diocese, and then the family got transferred to another diocese where they already had confirmation. So, you know, the kid missed it, and life takes off, you know. So we're willing to work with you, okay? Please, though, don't wait till somebody asks you to be a godparent. Come on in, we'll work with you, and we have wonderful people who want to help you experience Jesus in the mystery of the sacraments.
Also in preparation for if they're gonna get married.
That's another thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That they may wanna prepare early, you know,
Yeah,
if
so
13.
before you fall in love with that person and ask them to marry, come get confirmed, okay? You know. Well, now the weekend of August, I thought it was July.
It is July. I'm sorry. I don't feel like we're in July right now. It still feels like June. So we're just looking forward.
Which still doesn't explain why the word is August, but don't tell anybody. Okay.
Misspelling.
Me too.
Well, this will be a good segue. As you might have heard, our pastoral assistant, Grace, is going to be leaving us this month. She has discerned and continues to discern her call to enter the Salesian Sisters of St. John Bosco. And so we are preparing to say goodbye and know that our prayers are with you.
Thank you.
Okay. But like so many other young men and women who are seeking or thinking about religious vocation, student debt can prevent them from entering. The religious communities just cannot handle taking on that debt. And therefore, on July 16th, there will be a coffee and donations will be accepted. It'll be after the 8 o'clock and after the 10 o'clock Mass. We invite you to come by and greet and Grace and also say farewell as she begins this, you know, very exciting time in her life. And we hope it's a blessed time. And one day we'll be able to say, hello, sister, how are you? But all proceeds from this will go to help pay Grace's financial student loan. And you'll be entering, what day are you entering?
We're getting a new Mother Superior. So originally the day was August 24th. They might move it up to Assumption. They might move it up a little earlier. So depending on what the Superior wants, depends on when I enter.
Okay. Yeah,
I
you
know.
gotta get used to.
My type A personality is like, I need 3 months notice. I need to plan my stuff. And they're like, no, you just have to obey and go when we call. So. And I'll be in Ecuador for 2 weeks in July on a mission trip. So also
What's the dates of that?
that'll be
Yeah.
July 20th through August 2nd. So
Okay, so we know when to, you know how to pray.
We gotta
Yeah.
pray.
Yeah, I'll be
Let me
in-
just write that.
it actually
Yes.
so the Servant Sisters of the Home of the Mother, they're a different religious order than the Salesians. They are a Spanish order. They have locations in Spain, Ecuador, the United States, Ireland. They're really expanding quickly. They're going to Ecuador for 2 weeks, and I am very blessed to go with them, even though I don't speak Spanish. I'm not a nurse and have literally no useful skills. But I'm going to serve for 2 weeks.
They'll say, go to the chapel and pray.
Yeah.
Go to the chapel and
No,
pray.
they already told me. They go, you're tall, you're strong, you'll be moving things for 2 weeks. I'm gonna come back with like all these muscles and a lot of humility because I'm excited. I'm excited to go, but also fully aware
Do
that
me a favor. Don't drink the water.
Yeah.
I was asking, like, they're a very poor country. I'm like, how do we drink water? They, if you drink anything but bottled,
Not
you're
even
gonna.
ice. Don't even have ice.
And don't use the ice.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
And don't,
And we're not even sleeping inside. We're sleeping in tents for 2 weeks outside. Yeah.
bring a lot of
Sunscreen.
sunscreen
And bug spray.
Yeah.
and bug spray.
If you've seen me the past 3 days, I've been wrecked by the New Jersey sun, so I'm really doomed with Ecuador.
And bring a big
I'm
hat.
gonna come back and just like a lobster, just.
So you're leaving July 20th. When do you
Yeah.
get back?
August 2nd. So that's why July 16th, the coffee end will probably be my last time really being around St. Robert's quite quickly. I'm going to be jumping on a plane to Ecuador, and then depending on when the Salesians call, I could be in as early as August 5th or as late as August 24th. So either way, a lot of preparation to do. A lot
Yes.
of goodbyes, a lot of see you laters to say.
Yes.
That's,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's better.
Because when you
Yeah.
come home for a break, you can come
Yeah.
visit us,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
and we can sing Dominica, Nika, Nika, Dominica, Nika, Nika. I sing of Dominique. Okay.
And I've still never seen Sound of Music, so.
Oh, you must see that.
Or
Yeah, but-
Sister Act, so I'm the
Well,
worst soon to
that-
be nun.
No, don't worry about that. She leaves the convent, and
I know she marries the guy.
I know, and so say no to being a nanny to anybody. And the other one is she was not a nun to begin with.
No.
She was a headliner.
Oh,
That's a lie. Anyway,
okay.
so but let's get back. Okay, we digress. Sunday, July 23rd is Grandparents' Day in the Roman Catholic Church. It's the Sunday closest to the feast of St. Joachim and St. Anne. And about 2 years ago, our Holy Father, Pope Francis, declared the Sunday closest as being a day of prayer for grandparents, that we appreciate our grandparents, and has also placed a plenary indulgence for those who participate and fulfill the requirements for our plenary indulgence, which means going to Mass and receiving communion, going to confession, and praying for the intention of the Holy Father. So those are the three big, and I think it's like an Our Father, Glory Be, Hail Mary, and the Creed in all that. So we are in the process of preparing something for Grandparents' Day, probably after the 10 o'clock Mass, a little something in the hall. We'll have more information about that later. And so we're encouraging our grandparents to bring their grandchildren to Mass with them. There will be a special blessing for all grandparents. And I think it's just a wonderful idea, and I know that it is coming from our Holy Father, who feels that our older faithful sometimes get overlooked because they find themselves kind of pushed aside by a very technological, fast-paced society. And we miss out on the wisdom and the experience they've had in life, especially for those now who lived a life before cell phones, before computers, before Uber, and before more and more I'm seeing young people going up to cash out and they just put their phone underneath and they go. So they can't write a check, God help them. They can't even write. They can't tell time. And if their phone dies, they really go into a panic, and a true panic, because all their information is on this phone. And so I would say that sometimes it's good to disconnect. I think they call it disconnect. Spend time with your grandparents when you have them. I can't tell you how often I think, gee, I wish I had asked my grandmother this, and
I was
this.
just gonna say that, Monsignor, about, especially with recipes. Oh, my grandmother used to make, and then they always say, I wish I had asked my grandmother for that recipe. Well, now's the time to do it.
Yes.
Any of those things,
And grandparents, don't skip an ingredient. My dentist, who I knew in high school in my first assignment, her father was my dentist, and now she is a dentist. And she told me one day she took time off to spend it with her grandmother to learn how to make her grandmother's Christmas pie.
Oh,
And when she wasn't looking, Grandma threw something into the recipe,
No.
and now there's no Christmas pie. So, do not do that, because you might spend extra time in purgatory for not sharing the complete recipe with your family, so that they will remember you at the holidays. But it's so much sweeter when you're eating something and it tastes as good because it was made by Grandma, earlier.
yeah, absolutely,
So-
absolutely. And also memory books are very good to have, like family history.
Yes.
That's wonderful. That's a big thing now people are doing. They're giving their grandparents books to be able to document cousins that they had and what
Yeah.
kind, different things. I mean, so it's wonderful if people can really get into that to leave some,
You know,
legacy.
Since my mom passed away, we've been kind of emptying out the house a little bit. And there's a huge box in the closet in my brother's room filled with photographs from her mother.
Uh-huh.
And in that box was also a video. Well, it was not a video originally. It was
60 millimeter.
16 millimeter that was made a video, that was made a CD, a disc.
Wow.
And we were
It's a lot
watching.
of steps.
I know, and we were watching it, and it was my grandmother and her sisters and brother and working at my Uncle Frank's hotel in Long Branch, which was a
Beautiful.
very small hotel, and to see them younger and energetic, and enjoying that was a real gift.
Yes.
So.
My grandma's crazy. First of all, I made a menace out of her. I taught her how to use the iPhone. She's as bad as I am. I'm like, hey, Grandma. She's like, doing the crossword. I'm like, okay, see you later. So she's like that. But we were going through after my grandpa passed a year ago, her boxes. I'm like, Grandma, you have so many photos when you were young. She's like, here's my ex-boyfriend Chris. Here's my ex-boyfriend John. I'm like, you kept them. You just kept all these images. She's like, sure did. I looked great.
Speaking of YouTube, there's a reel, a line of where it's like my dad or my grandfather, my mom or my grandmother
Yeah.
saying, when I was younger, I had to, say no to a lot of, characters who wanted to take me out on a date or wanted to date me. And then they show you pictures of when they were younger, and they were quite hot. So, if grandchildren and children, if you think your parents looked this way when they were 20, 25, you're wrong. Before you came along, or as my father would say, before you were a glint in their eyes, okay, your parents had a full life, and you'll only discover it by spending time with them and talking about it.
Exactly.
And grandchildren, don't miss this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Okay, and now this past week, last week before the holiday, our parish had a meeting, and it was really a good meeting.
Excellent.
And we're in a process called Parish Catalyst, and it is a program sponsored by Renew International. For those of you who have been around for a while, you know of Renew as being a way of developing small faith sharing groups. Well, Renew International developed this to kind of help parishes revitalize and develop ways of outreach to the number of Catholics who have kind of drifted from the practice of the faith. And our project has been to kind of, revitalize our many ministries that have kind of gone dormant because of COVID. Okay, when we locked down, a lot of things stopped, and so we had a major meeting of over, I think there was, how many people?
Was over 100, about 112, 115. I'm still
Okay.
trying to get a final count.
Okay, about 112 or over 100 men and women who are involved in a variety of ministries.
All the coordinators, most of the coordinators of all the ministries. We have 51
51 ministries, and we
they're
had
represented.
51,
Yeah,
at least
plus-
51.
Right, plus members. So that's why we had such a large total.
And-
Excellent.
And it wasn't like a meeting of rules and regulations
Mhm.
and this is what we're gonna do. It was a prayerful experience to help us really focus in on why we're involved in ministry, what do I get out of ministry, and how does my ministry, whatever it is, make me a disciple of Christ. Because sometimes we can be very busy, but are we growing closer to Christ? Is Christ the reason why we do what we do? Or is it because we like to help people, and which is good, but, you know, folks, sometimes the people we help are really helping us if we do it in Christ's name, okay, as disciples. So, as we move forward, if you're involved in any of these ministries, you'll probably get an invitation to be part of a meeting to continue to reflect on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how we're doing it. But we hope that coming out of COVID, we can continue to be a parish that reaches out. You know, it's interesting. On the 4th of July, I was with Bishop, and there was a priest there from Australia. And they were asked, what are you studying? And he said, he's here in this country studying on the new evangelization.
Oh.
So Bishop says, yeah, I kind of like the old evangelization. He said, how do you define the new evangelization? And I said, Bishop, we're not going after the unbaptized. We're going after our own people who have grown cold in the faith. And that's what the new evangelization is. I said, not that we don't want more people to come into the church that have never been in the church, but we want to remind people that the church is there for them.
And also, if I may add to that,
Yes.
if anyone that is listening and has been praying or contemplating or discerning whether or not they would want to be on a ministry, please contact me, extension 141, and I'll be more than happy to go over the different ministries and maybe where, you know, your experience and where you fit before. But you're always welcome. Just contact me.
And in a special way, we're looking for people who are interested in or feel called to go into the hospital to bring communion.
Amen.
And Marianne, you've been working with the chaplain
Yes.
over at Center State to make the process of being both a volunteer and a minister of to Catholics a smooth, you know, process. And so far, but it's a lot different than it was when I
Yes.
first arrived.
Yes.
You know, we just send people in, we train them to distribute Holy Communion, and the hospital says, well, here's the list, here, you know, here's, you know, welcome, and let you go through the hospital. Because of COVID, because of so many other illnesses that are communicable, it is so important that anybody going into the hospital be prepared, be vaccinated, and understand their do's and don'ts, because it's not grandma's hospital anymore. Speaking of grandparents, it's the new millennium hospital.
There will be up and coming training for the Eucharistic ministers for the hospital as well as the homebound. We will be doing that in the next month or so.
Okay.
But as soon as we end up getting a few more people that would be interested in the hospital ministry, it would be wonderful to, you know, include them as well.
Okay, so right there, we have a need. If you're interested, or if you know somebody who would be interested, you know, have them give us a call. Okay? Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, and Grace, God bless.
Thank
You know, and really kind of your Mass of Thanksgiving, because I noticed it wasn't on the list. Your Mass of Thanksgiving,
We're not really doing a mass, really. It'll just be, I'll be at the coffee ends and everything.
oh,
Yep.
and what's July 15th?
Private.
I know the dinner is private, but the Mass is not
True.
private.
On
True,
July
true.
15th, the 4:30 mass on Saturday, I'll be having my friends, family, the staff, and everything. There will be a mass in which I hope to get a blessing from Monsignor. But the mass to be celebrated. Well, if you would like to be there, I'll be there that 4:30, the 8 to 10. But yes, I will be with my family and friends that evening after the 4:30 mass to say see you later. Which St. Robert so graciously is letting me. Yep.
Just to let you know that the celebrant of the Mass is Father Raphael.
He's putting it back on you. He told me he doesn't want it. He wants you to do it.
No, he's
He
the
told me.
he's the celebrant, but I'm the preacher.
Okay.
Wow,
And then
wonderful.
you'll have a
Oh,
deacon
then-
from St. Ben's. You'll have the chaplain from Princeton coming. So nice little
Oh my God.
mixer.
So
That's
we'll-
at the 4:30.
That's the
On
4:30.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. And that's when we sing so long, farewell, Avivas and goodbye.
Sure. Sing your whole homily. The people will love it. I'll get you tap shoes.
I took tap. I just
Did you
went
really?
to-
I took tap
did.
too. We could do a duet.
Well,
It's our time to shine.
trust me, it's been such a long time. My taps are tarts. No. Please have a good week. We'll see you this weekend at Mass. God bless.